Dear brothers and sisters, have you ever imagined what happens when a man declared dead returns to life with a message from eternity? This is the extraordinary story of Brother Daniele Natale, a humble Capuchin friar known for his unwavering faith and spiritual bond with Padre Pio. Brother Daniele was not only a witness to miracles, but also a protagonist in one of the greatest stories of faith of our time: a terminal diagnosis, a surgery filled with suffering, and a journey of 3 hours in purgatory. Returning to share what he had seen, Brother Daniele left us with a powerful message of hope, mercy, and conversion. Get ready to uncover a unique chapter of Christian faith that will illuminate your heart.
It was in the immediate post-war period. I was in San Giovanni Rotondo, my hometown, in the same convent as Padre Pio. For some time, I had been feeling pain in my digestive system. I underwent a medical checkup, and the doctor diagnosed an incurable disease, cancer. With death in my heart, I went to tell everything to Padre Pio, who, after listening to me, bluntly said, "Get operated on." I was confused and reacted. I said, "Father, it's not worth it. The doctor gave me no hope. I know I'm going to die. It doesn't matter what the doctor said. Get operated on, but in Rome, at such and such a clinic and by such and such a professor." The father said these things with such force and certainty that I replied, "Yes, Father, I will do it." Then he looked at me tenderly and, moved, added, "Do not fear. I will always be with you." The next morning, I was already on my way to Rome. While sitting on the train, I felt a mysterious presence beside me. It was Padre Pio, keeping his promise to stay close. When I arrived in Rome, I learned that the clinic was Regina Elena and that the professor's name was Riccardo Moretti. By evening, I had entered the clinic. It seemed as though everyone was expecting me, as if someone had announced my arrival. They welcomed me immediately. After the medical consultation, the medical director came to ask for my consent for surgery scheduled for the next day. I signed the required form. At 7 a.m., I was already in the operating room. They prepared me for the surgery. Despite the anesthesia, I remained awake and conscious. I entrusted myself to the Lord with the same words he addressed to the Father before dying. "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." The doctors began the procedure, and I could hear everything they were saying. I suffered excruciating pain, but did not complain. Instead, I was happy to endure such pain, offering it to Jesus, and I realized how all those sufferings purified my soul from my sins. At a certain point, I fell asleep. When I regained consciousness, they told me I had been in a coma for 3 days before dying. I appeared before the throne of God. I saw God not as a harsh judge, but as a loving and affectionate Father. Then I understood that the Lord had done everything out of love for me, caring for me from the first to the last moment of my life, loving me as if I were the only creature on this earth. I also realized, however, that not only had I failed to reciprocate this immense divine love, but I had completely neglected it. I was sentenced to 2 or 3 hours in purgatory. But how? I asked myself. Only 2 or 3 hours? And then I will be able to stay forever near God, eternal love? I leaped with joy and felt like a favored son. The vision disappeared, and I found myself in purgatory. The 2 or 3 hours in purgatory were given to me mainly for failing to observe the vow of poverty, for keeping a few lire for myself, as I mentioned earlier. The pain was terrible, and it was unclear where it came from, but it was intensely felt. The senses that had offended God the most in this world, my eyes, my tongue, suffered the greatest pain. And it was unbelievable because, in purgatory, one feels as though one has a body and recognizes others just as in the world. Meanwhile, only a few moments of those pains had passed, and it already felt like an eternity. What causes the greatest suffering in purgatory is not so much the fire, no matter how intense, but the feeling of being far from God. What is most sorrowful is knowing that one had all the means for salvation and failed to take advantage of them. I then thought of going to a fellow brother from my convent to ask him to pray for me while I was in purgatory. That brother was astonished because he could hear my voice but could not see me, and he asked, "Where are you? Why can't I see you?" I insisted, and seeing that I had no other way to reach him, I tried to touch him, but my arms passed through his without contact. Only then did I realize I was without a body. I contented myself with persistently asking him to pray for me, and then left. But how? I said to myself, weren't there supposed to be only 2 or 3 hours of purgatory? And yet, 300 years have already passed? At least, that's how it seemed to me. Suddenly, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to me, and I begged and implored her, saying, "O most holy Virgin Mary, Mother of God, obtain for me from the Lord the grace to return to earth to live and act solely for the love of God." I also noticed the presence of Padre Pio and pleaded with him as well. "By your excruciating pains, by your blessed wounds, my dear Padre Pio, pray to God for me, that I may be freed from these flames and allowed to continue purgatory on earth." Then I saw nothing more, but realized that the Father was speaking to Our Lady. A few moments later, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to me again. She was the Madonna of Grace, but without the child Jesus. She bowed her head and smiled at me. At that precise moment, I regained possession of my body, opened my eyes, and stretched out my arms. Then, with a sudden movement, I threw off the sheet covering me. My request had been granted. I had received the grace. The Madonna had answered my plea. Immediately afterward, those who were watching over me and praying, terrified, rushed out of the room to find nurses and doctors. Within minutes, the clinic was in turmoil. Everyone thought I was a ghost and decided to lock the door and leave, fearing spirits. The next morning, I woke up very early and sat in a chair. Despite the door being carefully guarded, some managed to enter and asked me for an explanation of what had happened. To reassure them, I said the attending physician was on his way, and he would explain what had happened. Doctors usually didn't arrive before 10 o'clock. That morning, it was still 7 o'clock, and I said to those present, "Look, the doctor is arriving. He's now parking his car in that spot." But no one wanted to believe me. I continued, "He's now crossing the street, holding his jacket on his arm and running his hand through his hair as if he's worried. I don't know what could be bothering him." Still, no one believed me. Then I said, "So that you may believe that I'm not lying to you, I assure you that he's now taking the elevator and is about to knock on the door." I had barely finished speaking when the door opened and the doctor entered, to the great astonishment of everyone present. With tears in his eyes, the doctor said, "Yes, now I believe. I believe in God. I believe in the Church. I believe in Padre Pio."
The extraordinary experience of Fra Daniele Natale is a testimony that invites us to reflection and prayer. After this episode, Fra Daniele resumed his life of apostolate as a faithful disciple of Saint Pio of Pietrelcina, who had made him this categorical promise: "Wherever you go, I will be there too. Whatever you say, I will say as well." He lived another 42 years and summarized his ardent desire to save souls in this brief prayer: "Lord, give me all the suffering you want, but one day let me meet in paradise all the people I have approached." When someone expressed doubts about purgatory, Fra Daniele not only clearly explained the Church's doctrine, but also added his personal testimony. "I saw the fire. I felt terrible burning in the flames. Much worse than the fire, I endured the terrible torment of being separated from God." Share this story with your loved ones so that Fra Daniele's message of hope may reach many souls. Leave a comment below and let us all unite in faith to support the souls in purgatory. May Fra Daniele's words encourage us to live in God's grace every day. May God bless us all.